Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the Imago Nutrition Podcast, where we answer your questions and give you practical nutrition strategies to help you and your family flourish. Danielle, it is about to be 2025. I'm going to put you on the spot. What are you most excited about in 2025? I don't even have my own answer to this question yet. I'm going to have to come up with something on the fly while you're answering.
Oh man. Well, I'm excited for more basketball. I don't know. We're starting that. We haven't really done too many games, but what else?
The boys are going to ball out.
Jared and I are going on a cruise. I guess that's fun.
Oh, that's right. Remind me where y'all are going again.
St. Thomas, Dominican Republic, and one other stop. I don't know, with Jenny and James.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. I remember that. That's right. Well, that's going to be terrible. It's not going to be fun. I can't imagine going to warm places with friends. That'll be terrible. We'll pray for you, suffering for the gospel, of course. So that's awesome. Well, I don't have an answer to mine. Yeah, I don't know. We are kicking on. We are launching the first ever. It's going to be weird, but as you know, I coach futsal, which is an indoor version of soccer, and we are launching, our futsal academy is launching the first ever Nashville Futsal Invitational.
Wow.
Actually, next weekend, so it's literally the first weekend of 2025. We had hoped for like 50 plus teams. We got over 90 teams from 4 different states that are coming to Nashville.
Wow.
It's going to be absolutely bonkers, but it's going to be kind of historic. So maybe I'll go with that just because it's kind of, like I said, historic. But yeah, I mean, some family travels, that sort of stuff is always in the mix. So that should be pretty cool. So, well, we've got an interesting topic, and this is a bit, if I'm being honest, it's a bit of a tangent for me at times. But if you as a listener, amid all the hustle and bustle, you're coming out of the holidays, but there's always this idea like, oh, after the holidays, things will calm down, but they never do, right? Like, everything stays kind of chaotic year round. And so we're headed into the new year, often with the additional complication of like, oh, I should get my health back on track. I should work on some things. I should go to the gym more. I should eat better, et cetera, et cetera. But something that Danielle and I have seen as a recurring theme as we've worked with clients for all these years is this mental friction of this idea that I want to eat healthier, but it's so inconvenient. Right? We've got our rhythms, we've got our habits, we have the decisions that we like to make on a consistent basis. And we want to change those, but that causes what's called mental friction, right? And so amid the hustle and bustle of life, if you want to eat healthier but think it's inconvenient, this episode is going to help you wipe that excuse off the face of the map in 2025, if I can dare to say. All right. We want this to be a freeing episode for you. If you feel a little bound up in your habits, bound up in your, I gotta grit my teeth and be more disciplined and make better decisions and all sorts of stuff. But it's just so inconvenient. My life is so fast. There's so much going on. Sometimes I just need to eat. Right. And that's convenient, but eating healthy is inconvenient. We're going to help you. We're going to help relieve you from that burden and show you that eating healthy, no surprise, our thesis is that eating healthy is not less convenient. I would just say it just involves making different decisions, which seems less convenient. It's just masked, right? It seems less convenient because they're different decisions, and that's a little bit of mental friction. But as soon as you get over that, you realize that it's really just about making decisions. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 4 different scenarios where this will come into play. Now, there could be more scenarios that you encounter with your food, and you're going to hear some consistent principles, but we're going to use 4 scenarios to illustrate this idea, or at least our thesis, that eating healthy is not actually less convenient than eating unhealthy. It just requires making some different decisions. And by the way, once those decisions become second nature and habitualized, that's where you have all the freedom to say, oh, it was never less convenient or, more convenient. It was just making that switch in terms of my decision. So, by the way, if you have a question that you'd like us to tackle in 2025, you can submit that to us. You can head over to our website, imagonutrition.com/podcast. Again, Imago Nutrition, IMAGO, nutrition.com/podcast. You can fill out that form, send us your question. And we look forward to tackling some of your questions in future episodes. So, Danielle, here's how I'd like to maybe lay it out if I could. Let's take a look at these 4 scenarios. Maybe you and I break it up half and half. Okay. And then have a little banter back and forth, of course, as we always do. Usually me making some random rant after you've beautifully articulated, some sound advice, and then I just come in and rant. But let's take a look at this idea of convenient versus less convenient, healthy versus unhealthy. And by the way, every time we use those terms, I should have said this at the onset, healthy and unhealthy, those are in big quotation marks, right? There's not healthy and unhealthy necessarily. There's not good or bad. There's not clean or dirty, right? There's nutrient dense foods, nutrient deficient foods. There's a spectrum. We can include all of these. So just know that there's big quotation marks around healthy and unhealthy, but that's common vernacular, so we're not afraid to use it. So let's take a look at 4 scenarios, Danielle. Let's take a look at eating healthy versus unhealthy at home, eating healthy versus unhealthy at the grocery store, what that means. And then I'll take, with your help, we'll take restaurants and fast food, eating healthy and unhealthy with restaurants and fast food. And then last but not least, on the go, like gas stations, airports, right? Like on the fly. And I've got some recent experience as of this last weekend with this that I'll share as well. So that sounds like a game plan. Danielle, talk us through, let's start with at home and this idea of healthy versus unhealthy, and healthy is less convenient and unhealthy is so much more convenient when I'm eating at home. Talk to us a little bit about that scenario.
Okay, so I think what I came up with was 2 kind of big points for both, both of these. For at home, the thing that helps the most is just prioritizing your time. And so when we use the time wisely that we have, it kind of reminded me of that article I wrote on meal planning strategies, that there's, I essentially outlined 4 different meal planning strategies that all of them have an advantage and all of them have a disadvantage. But when we just use one meal planning strategy, we're not getting all the advantages, and we do have that disadvantage of that one strategy that we're choosing. So when we use multiple meal planning strategies, we get all of the benefits, and it helps to decrease or minimize the disadvantage of those meal planning strategies when you're using them all together. So I think the biggest thing I would say as far as eating healthy at home is prioritizing your time. I've been trying and keep forgetting to write down how much time I spend in the kitchen when I'm going through a week. And I think I tracked it for 3 or 4 days and I forgot. So I think it was about 10 minutes in the morning before anyone was disturbing me of like, what do I need to get out for dinner tonight? Do I need to chop any vegetables? Do I need to marinate some chicken? Or just 10 minutes in the kitchen to just think about something for tonight or the next night when you have activities, or whatever night you have the least amount of time to get dinner on the table. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would focus on for at home is prioritizing time. And then the second one would be thinking ahead. So when you just let the whole day pass and you're right before dinner and everyone's hungry, obviously that's going to be a lot harder to get food on the table. So if you can just think ahead, I promise I do not plan out every meal for the whole week on Sunday. That feels too overwhelming to me. Some people that works really well. But I would say find something that works for you in a mindset of thinking ahead, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or the whole week, whatever works best for you. And again, looking at that article on our website on meal planning strategies, or maybe we'll put it in the show notes, of just utilizing all of those strategies can really help at home to become more convenient as far as making better choices. So
that's awesome. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we haven't compared notes. A lot of times we show up and we just clash our notes together, which is kind of fun because I'm learning on the fly as well as the listeners. So you may be getting to this with the grocery store thing, but the idea of eating healthy versus unhealthy, of course, having those quote unquote healthy foods available at home is also key. But I love where you're starting, which is really the headwaters. And this is maybe the meta narrative, like the biggest principle over all of these scenarios is deciding to be mindful about it, right? So your
Mm-hmm.
point about instead of reacting, being proactive, thinking ahead, a little bit of planning, though it doesn't have to be crazy. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of times people think, oh, you just must meal prep on Sundays and, have all your stuff late. I don't. I have rhythms, right?
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes make decisions on the fly, but I use often a different decision making matrix than most people,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, I'm hungry. That looks good. Like that's the average American decision making process. Oh, there it is. The store's right there. I can just go, Burger King, right? Nothing against Burger King, but they're just responding in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So having those foods available, of course, makes it more convenient at home. But I love where you really started, which was some of the headwaters of this. So, assuming I didn't steal any thunder from the grocery store, anything else from the at home, or should we roll into that grocery store component?
No, I think just to what you brought up as far as prioritizing your time, if it is made ahead of time, have you a crock pot of food waiting for you when you come home from work, you're obviously
Totally.
not going to stop by fast food because you have it already done. It's,
Totally.
you know, not something you want to waste. No, not your
Yeah.
time or your money. So,
Totally, totally. And
um,
for those that don't know, I mean, my wife does this brilliantly. She does, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 crock pot meals a week, at least. I'm
mhm,
the I benefit from it. We have 3 kids. We have 2 growing. I mean, all 3 of them are growing, but my boys are just absolute black holes when it comes to food. Our grocery budget is larger than our mortgage. That's a true thing. And so like they are just, I mean, my boy last night, we were getting ready to watch a movie at like 9 p.m. and he was like pouring himself a bowl of chili that had been made in a crock pot and then had been in the fridge and we had eaten it over the course of 3 days, And so all that to say that was very convenient for him because the time was put in ahead of time. And like you said, it doesn't have to be a lot, it doesn't have to be long, but it
mhm,
does need to be pretty consistent. So I
yeah.
love that. So that's our first scenario, which is at home and a couple considerations. Let's talk through our second one, which is a grocery store. Talk a little bit about this healthy, unhealthy, convenient slash inconvenient kind of dichotomy when it comes to grocery stores.
So for grocery stores, I would say two things. Reading your labels. So there are some convenience type foods that can be very nutrient dense. And then also building your plate. And what I mean by that is we often talk about how you can build a plate to feel satisfied. And if you have that image in your mind, when you're grocery shopping, you'll get the right foods in your house. So, for example, that plate is half your plate of non starchy vegetables. So that's any vegetables except for potatoes, peas, corn, and beans. Those veggies go in the fourth of the plate, which are called carbohydrates. And that's also your rice and your pasta and your beans and lentils. And then the last portion is a fourth your plate protein. So if you have that in your mind and half the plate is non starchy vegetables, you better have half your plate, half your grocery cart of your non
Ah,
starchy vegetables. So
ding, ding, ding.
obviously, people that, maybe don't have as many family members might rely more on frozen, which has the same amount of vitamins and minerals and fiber as the fresh, or maybe they're not in season, right? Depending on the season, which
Mm-hmm.
ones you like, you can get fresh or frozen. That's still going to give you the most satisfaction with the fiber and the vitamins and minerals. So definitely stock up on the fresh as much as you can without wasting, and then back it up with the frozen, and then a fourth year plate. Or sorry, fourth of your grocery cart would be your protein, and a fourth year grocery cart would be your carbs. So I feel like when you think about those two things, reading labels and building a plate, that can make it a lot more convenient to have the right foods in the house to make some good decisions. As far as reading labels go, looking for your carbohydrates to have 3 grams of fiber or more. So that's going to give you more of those whole grains and those carbohydrates that help you feel satisfied. As far as like your protein, if it has a label, your dairy has a label. So choosing lean or low fat protein sources. And then we already went over the, fruits and veggies, fresh or frozen. So that's the two takeaways that I would have for the grocery store, making it convenient when we can read those labels and when we can know what's going to help us feel satisfied with a meal.
That's awesome. I've honestly, maybe because I don't do the majority. My wife does. Carissa does 99% of the grocery shopping. Like sometimes I pop over to go grab a couple things, and so maybe she already does this kind of instinctually, but I've never thought about shopping to plate proportions before. I've never thought
Yeah.
about that. I think that's huge. That can start to be a framework. And it doesn't mean you can't have a couple other things in there. Like, we're not saying that.
Right.
Like, you guys like to have Oreos every once in a while. Great, grab the Oreos, right? We're not saying you can't have anything else, but to be thinking 85, 90, 95% of those foods should
Mm-hmm.
be built around that sort of framework. I think yeah, it's brilliant. Brilliant.
So
No
the
spas.
child seat is for those fun foods. Or I
Exactly.
do
Yeah, there you
not
go.
like to say fun foods. I
Fun
don't know
foods,
how
I
that
know.
came out of my mouth.
Yeah,
But
I know,
those
I know.
less nutrient dense foods would be in the
There you go.
child seat. There you
Yeah.
go.
Are you comfortable saying nutrient deficient foods? That's what I say. I say nutrient
Yeah.
dense and nutrient deficient. That's the
There we
spectrum.
go. That's better.
And I enjoy those. Like, we just had, two birthdays and Christmas in the span of 48 hours. And we had two different cakes in our fridge. We had a cookies and cream cake, and we also had a salted caramel cake that we got from the grocery store that our family of 5 ate through in the span of, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. That is a nutrient deficient, delicious food that we consumed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was not 95% of what we are consuming. Again, then, by 9 p.m., my boy's eating, a 3-bean chili with ground turkey, so. All right,
Yeah.
very cool. Well, that's super helpful. Now, if you can brace yourself, we'll move into my half of this, and then Danielle would love your thoughts on this. I'll kind of give us some thoughts as to kind of how I think through these scenarios. And obviously, in working with people for over 16 years now, I'm in the business world. I work with people in the business world. In fact, I had a client call this weekend who's a top executive at a healthcare company here in Tennessee, and just working through some very practical ways to think about food in the hustle and bustle of life. We have to reconcile, this quote unquote desire to eat healthy, quote unquote, right, with things like restaurants and fast food, because sometimes that's a reality and sometimes that's okay. We want to keep that in its proper place. We don't need to be eating fast food or restaurants, 1 to 2 times a day, 6 days a week. But I eat out at restaurants. We eat out at restaurants, and sometimes fast food is convenient and helpful. So, here's the biggest thing. Again, back to kind of this guiding principle. Deciding to be mindful is usually the biggest thing. And I've learned, this is kind of a rant, I've learned people actually know far more about, quote, eating healthy than they believe or that they let on. Because if I was to follow you around and just walk into the restaurant with you and be like over your shoulder and say, all right, make a healthy decision, chances are someone's to go, oh my gosh, I should eat a bowl of mayonnaise with sugar. Like, no, like what a relatively healthier decision or more nutrient dense decision is. And I can't follow you around. So you have to create this new conscience in you that says, hey, I'd like to feel better. I'd like, more energy. I've got health goals. I want to live long, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to make some decisions along the way. So I think the biggest thing is just deciding to be mindful. That is lost in so much of what we do. We tend to just say, again, oh, strap for time, go to the store or go to the fast food, grab something that tastes delicious, and then run back to the office, right? Or whatever you're doing. Okay, so number one, just decide to be mindful. And trust me, if you do nothing other than say, I'm going to think about the thoughts that I have about food before I make those decisions, chances are it's going to clear up the vast majority of friction that you might have about making these decisions. You know more than you think about eating healthy. You just have to start practicing it. Okay, but let's get brass tacks. So after deciding to be mindful, when it comes to restaurants, the first thing is actually the selection of the restaurant. Right? I've traveled across. I've been to 46 states. I think in the U.S. I have traveled all across this country. I have almost never seen, within the span of a couple miles, you having one option to eat, right? And if you're like, oh no, I was at a gas station once, we'll talk about that in the on the go section. I got that one covered too. Rarely, if ever, do you plop into a town and the only thing they have is one fast food restaurant, and now you are beholden to that because you haven't eaten in 87 hours and you have to eat right now. And that's the only, it almost never happens, right? There's a competitive market out there. Every time Burger King pops up, McDonald's pops up across the street. And by the way, then probably Subway pops up and Chick-fil-A is taking over in the South. And then there's going to be a Chipotle, and then there's going to, whatever it is, there's going to be competition. First thing is making a decision about the restaurant, okay? And this can get built up over time, but which one do you prefer? Which one has the options that are more in accordance with your goals? Which ones do you have to not think about? You go in, you're like, oh, this is what I like at this restaurant, right? That can start to then feel much more convenient. Okay. So for me, I'm always looking for a Chipotle. I'm always looking even for like a Chick-fil-A. Okay. Because I know what I like at those things and I can get them real quick without even having to think about. Honestly, if I walked into a Burger King, it would take me a lot more time to decide because I don't go there very often. Right. I have chosen this route and it's just very quote unquote convenient for me. So, number two, just remember that there's restaurant selection, whether it's a sit down restaurant, fast food restaurant. Learn what you like, learn what is easy to get the sort of meals that you're looking for. And then just make that decision before you even walk in. But let's say that you walk into the restaurant. Now, how do I think through this? A couple different things. Similar to what Danielle was talking about in terms of, veggies and grains and proteins, etc. When I walk into a restaurant, whether it's fast food or a sit down, a couple things I'm looking for. I'm looking, one, to start with my protein options. Okay. What sort of lean protein options do they have? I try to stay away from the fried options. Doesn't mean I don't have that every once in a while. It's kind of celebratory. But I'm generally looking for chicken, generally looking for grilled chicken. I'm generally looking for lean beef. I'm looking maybe for some sort of like fish. Okay. What sort of meal is built around that protein? Then I'm looking to get veggies. I mean, virtually every restaurant, even the fast food restaurants these days. Guys, I grew up in the 80s. It is so much easier to get a quote unquote healthy meal from a place like freaking McDonald's now than it was back then. I don't know what we're complaining about. Okay. There's just no option. Dude, there's so many options. Starbucks has great food options now, for crying out loud. It's a coffee joint. Okay. So I'm looking to get veggies. They all have veggies of some sort. Load up salads with fresh vegetables, whatever options they have. I'm loading up on some veggies. Okay. Look for those restaurants and make the decision to go in and ask if they have a whole grain option. Okay. So I'm looking for wheat bread. I'm looking for a whole grain bread over maybe a white bread. Doesn't mean white bread is, the end of the world, but I'm looking for places that consistently have whole grain options. And then another thing I'm looking for is portion control. Okay. Again, relative to like the 80s, many, if not most restaurants now, some by law, depending on the state, have to list calories, right? They have to list what the calories are. So if you look up there, right, and you have any sense of like your caloric intake for a day, and you're like, that thing is 1,200 calories. Okay, that's fine. Still order it. Just maybe you eat half of it, just depending on where you are, what your goals are. But be mindful of portion control. Okay. Know that restaurants like to load us up in America. Sit down restaurants, some especially, love to load us up with huge portions. It doesn't mean you have to finish your plate. Okay. That is ironically one of the hardest things to unembed in people's minds, is that you're being rude if you don't finish your plate. Cut the thing in half, put it in a to-go box. Okay. Be mindful of your portion control. Take a look at those calorie numbers. Okay. Dressings and sauces. Love to order those on the side. Okay. Choose a light option if they have them. It's predominantly from the fat. Fat is good, but predominantly the sauces and those dressings are coming with fat, which has more than 2 times the amount of calories of carbs and protein. So that's actually where a lot of the calorie creep, as I call it, comes in, is actually in the sauces and the dressings. So ask for a light version or have it on the side so you can just kind of drizzle it as opposed to drench it. I should write that down. That kind of made sense. So I like to drizzle that as opposed to drench it. Okay. And then sodium, right? Check labels, check sodium content if possible. Look, if you're going into a fast food, you're going to a restaurant, look, you're going to get a sodium bomb. We just know that. That's why we don't want to eat it a lot. One of the reasons, at least. But just look for some of those lower sodium options if possible. So again, you've got the decision to be mindful. You've got the restaurant selection, and then you've got your food selection within that restaurant. Okay, so those are a couple principles. Those were just some of my initial thoughts, Danielle, as I went through it. What did I miss, or what would you like to amend?
So yeah, I think for me, I'm looking for descriptions, so things that say sauteed or buttered or creamy, those things are going to be the ones that I would just be more mindful of my portions.
Yep.
And so my 2 takeaways for restaurants would be looking at the calories and the descriptions, and then also just like you said, being mindful that the calories in the calories within the portions are going to be higher than if you made the same exact thing at home. So
100%.
roughly a restaurant meal is about 200 calories more than if you made it at home. So that means just eat slowly, chew really well, slow down, take your time, eat away from a screen, please, 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 and talk to someone if you can. But yeah, just being mindful when you are having a calorie dense meal, just like really fully enjoy it. We really, really, really want you to fully enjoy every single bite, but we don't want you to rush and we don't want you to be distracted so you miss it. So those are the things that I would say for the restaurants.
Amazing. And last but not least, on the go. Okay, so there's one thing if you're at home, there's another thing if you're at a grocery store, there's another thing if you're at a restaurant or fast food. But what about those pesky times that you're on a road trip and you stop at that random town that just has a gas station? Now, personal experience. I just ate over the weekend. We had some futsal friendlies down in Alabama. Okay, so we were just down in Alabama, one of my boys and I. He was playing, I was coaching. He had a big old lunch before we got on the road. I had nothing. I'd come from a workout. We jumped in the car. We headed down, and I realized I was going to be coaching, I think, 5 games, 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, 5 games in a row, no break in between, no chance to get food. So I was like, I need to eat before, and I need to bring something with. So talk about 2 things on the go real quick. So I was like, I need to eat something now. So we got down to Huntsville, Alabama. I pulled into a Starbucks. I got the what do they call it? The spinach egg white feta wrap at Starbucks. Amazing. I forget how many grams of protein. I think it's 20 plus at least. Delicious food. I had already had my caffeine for the day, or else I would have gotten like a cold brew or something like that. I just got that. Has like a whole wheat tortilla. Ate that. Beautiful meal on the go at a coffee shop. Nice protein, good fiber, nutrient dense meal right there at Starbucks. Okay. Then I said, well, on the way, I said, I need something in between those meals. So we stopped at a Shell gas station outside of Huntsville, Alabama. Okay. And I grabbed a Fit Crunch protein bar. Okay. And I grabbed a water. Okay. So here's a couple things. So that's just a little personal anecdote. It can be done on the fly, on the go, whether it's at, like a coffee joint or even a gas station. That was just my personal decision. That was all I needed. It was good. And we had Chipotle after the tournament. Okay. But here's how I think through gas stations. Here's how I think through airports even. So I do a fair amount of travel for my full-time job. And so airports even. People are like, oh, I'm at the airport. I just have to eat like trash. Not these days, you don't. There's so many good options. But here's how I think through it. Number one, I start with I'm looking for protein. Okay. I'm looking for a protein dense either bar that's relatively low in things like sugar, or even a protein shake. Muscle Milk, Fairlife, great protein shakes that are absolutely delicious and get me a nice bump in my protein. I'm looking for like a beef jerky. Hopefully they have a low sodium option. I know that's not always available in gas station because they have limited space. So a lot of times you're going to get the full sodium beef jerky, but that's okay. Every once in a while, I'm also going to be looking for like nuts, unsalted almonds, peanuts, cashews are my favorite. And so I'm looking for some of those low sodium options to get some protein, whether it's a Fit Crunch bar, which is baked, whether it's a protein shake of some sort, beef jerky, nuts. Okay. Virtually every gas station has those. Okay. You don't have to go in and grab a full bag of Doritos. Like, well, I was at a gas station. You literally walked by the protein bar section. You literally walked by the beef jerky section. You literally walked by the unsalted nut section and grabbed a bag of Doritos. You have options. You've just become habitualized to going for that bag of Doritos. Okay. Number 2, I've been amazed at this in the modern world, and this is not always the case. The farther you get out from the cities, the less likely is the case. But virtually every gas station in and around Nashville and some of the places that I frequent have fruit baskets now. Bananas, apples, oranges. I'll be candid. I tend to go for the ones with like the thickest rind, right? Or like the thickest outer layer. So I love an orange. I love a banana from a gas station. Apples, I'm a little leery of because I'm like, oh, hands and gas stations. And okay, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm looking for something with a really thick outer layer, if you will. But I'm blown away at how many gas stations have fresh fruit. And then also go to the refrigerator section. They have cups of fruit. They have grapes. They have pineapple cups. They have berry cups. They have all these different foods. Like, I can see them in my mind. We've gone on so many road trips with the family. I walk in, I can see that little roundabout refrigerated shelf section that has all those things. And again, unlike the 80s, early 90s, where gas stations were admittedly, like from what I can remember, pretty rubbish when it came to options, it is so much better now. It's 2025. We just have to make different decisions when we go into those environments. Okay. Heck, you can get vegetables now. You can get pre-cut carrots. I love, like, baby carrots. You can get pre-cut cucumbers. You can get pickles, whatever it is. You can get veggies at gas stations now. Okay. You can get dairy options there. Again, I said like protein shakes and stuff, but you can get like a low fat string cheese there. Okay. You can get this isn't dairy, but like a jerky, stick that's like, I think Chomps is the new brand, which is relatively few ingredients, right? There's amazing things. Snack bars, look for things with whole grains, nuts, maybe dried fruit, like maybe as little added sugar as possible, right? There's one kind of parameter you can think about. So try to think about like as much protein for as few calories and as few added sugar as possible. Don't worry about total sugar as much as thinking about added sugar, because that total sugar could come from things like dried fruit, which is good. Okay, drinks. Think about your waters. Think about your, maybe 0-calorie Gatorades. Think about unsweetened teas. Okay, there's delicious options out there. You're not confined to Coca-Cola anymore. It's not 1991. Okay, make different decisions. Okay. So that's a little bit of how and the same thing, by the way, when I go to airport, I rarely sit down at the restaurants. I know a lot of airports have sit down restaurants, and I've done that a little bit too if I have a long layover. But for the most part, when I go to an airport, it's kind of like a gas station scenario. I'm going to one of those convenient kiosks, or I'm going to one of those corner stores. And again, I'm looking for my protein option. I'm looking for maybe some fruit, some veggies, some unsalted nuts, right? And those are my go-to snack options. It doesn't mean that Doritos are the devil. It doesn't mean that you can't have some of those foods. But the idea is, you're not beholden to those things, and you're certainly not beholden to this idea that those things are convenient and quote unquote healthy decisions are not convenient. We just have to change those decisions. So that's my rant. That's a little bit of the on the go. Danielle, what do you have in terms of amending that rant?
I mean, for on the go, I just had, again, to know what helps you feel satisfied, and that's protein and fiber, and you covered that.
Yeah.
I definitely see the yogurt and the string cheese and the fruit and things at the gas station. So that can be an option. And also just, again, planning ahead. Whenever I travel, I know I have kids, so that helps. But I always carry a trail mix with nuts or fruit and cut veggies. Like it's in your fridge, hopefully, so we can just grab it.
Right.
Even making sure you put those fresh fruits and veggies in really good plain eyesight, so you're not forgetting them down in the drawers and then they go bad. So yeah, I think that's the two things I had is just knowing what helps you feel satisfied when you're on the go, so you don't get hangry, and then also bringing things with you can just make it a little bit easier, so you're not even tempted when you go into the gas station to grab those bags of chips. But I think, like you said in the very beginning, Mark, that it's that mental friction. And all of these tips, I think, are going to sound hard to anybody unless we are thinking about it's just about changing habits. And once you take one step at a time and change one habit at a time, then we can get to a point where this is a little bit easier, a little bit more convenient without that mental friction. And
by the way, maybe this is a future episode, but I have, in the last year, I have come to believe that how should I say this? The most underrated principle in nutrition is practice. Yeah, I would say it is the most underrated principle is actually practicing. So people are like, well, how'd you get so good at baseball? I practiced. How'd you get so good at your job? I practiced, right? I mean, even bigger things like, how is your marriage thriving? It's not perfect, but how are you doing so well? We practice it. Like we put into practice. We're not perfect. It doesn't mean we don't fall, but we practice it. And so people often do this, and I'm kind of a snarky guy. So they come up and be like, oh, how do you eat healthy? I'm like, I practice. They're like, okay, no, but like seriously, like practice. Well, where do I start? Practice. Go ahead and practice it. Go literally say, I'm going to practice eating well at a gas station. I'm going to practice eating well at a restaurant. I'm going to practice shopping well at the grocery store. I'm going to practice preparing at home. Actually go and practice it. Doesn't mean you have to be
Mm-hmm.
perfect. You never will be, but you do need to put in the reps. You do need to
Mm-hmm.
actually practice it. We can't go from, you know, making a whole set of decisions all the way over here to making completely different decisions without a bridge, which
Mm-hmm.
is practice. And by the way, the more you practice, the less friction you feel, the more quote unquote convenient it all feels. And then it becomes
Mm-hmm.
second nature, it becomes habitual. And then that's where you want to be. Because people, I think people often look at perhaps folks like us, Danielle, and like, oh, you just have it so easy. You just have it all figured out. They don't realize the amount of decisions and practice we've put in to get to this point where it does seem effortless. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
we're different than you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Necessarily. It's just that we've practiced this. And that's a good thing. That's where we want to help you. I want to coach you on that, right? I look at people that do, you were a swimmer. I know nothing about swim. I mean, I can swim, but I can't swim. You jump in a pool, you just be like, hey, I'm going to go do a casual, wicked fast D1, laps. And I'm like, it just looks effortless. Why? I'd be like, well, see, I could never do it. No, it's just because I could look a little bit more like that. I just haven't had the practice, right? So same thing with our decisions with food and in many areas of health. I just think it's the most underrated, concept in nutrition. We just like, well, how do I eat healthy? Practice it. No, but seriously, like, how do I eat healthier? Like, what do I need to do? What's the diet? No. Just practice it. Try it. Like, have that word
Mm-hmm.
echo throughout your day. So, sorry, rant off. Maybe I just satisfied an entire whole another episode in the last 2 minutes. But all that's to say, if we could help you do this, if we could help you put practical strategies into place in your life, in your context, look, it's one thing to give broad general advice like we've just done. It's another thing to get specific, individual, day by day, meal by meal, individual specific guidance and coaching. And if we can help you with that, we would love to in 2025. Head over to our website, check out imagonutrition.com, imagonutrition.com. Have a scroll through, shoot us a contact if you'd like, read through some of the things and some of the ways that we're helping people. And if we can do that for you in 2025, often what I've found is that it's not that people need more knowledge, it's that they need more application. And if we can help you make more application and make that barrier seem lower for you to have a healthier 2025, we would love to be that for you. So with that, if this episode has been helpful, please subscribe to the podcast so you get all of our notifications about upcoming episodes. Drop us a review, let us know how we're doing, and share with a friend. We'd love to help as many people for free as possible. You can follow us on social media. We are at Imago Nutrition across all major social media platforms. And finally, we'd like to thank Happy Pill for our theme song, Thinkin Bout Food. Hope you have a terrific 2025, and we're here for you. We'll talk soon. Bye.